Hey, a down-tempo beat, a chill backbeat for today's ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens.
It does seem chill.
It is a little chill. It's that procedural music that I always complain about. Hey, people are logging in, checking out. Say hello to your friends.
Hey, friends.
Yeah, this is nice. Okay, great. Chris says we have sound, and hello to me, but not to you, Owen KC Stephens. I'm just kidding. Everybody's coming here for you, my friend.
It seems like we have sound should be such a low hurdle to clear, and yet...
You know, take the wins where they come. What do they say? Gather ye rosebuds when they're on time. Owen sounds muffled, you say. Yeah. Are you, this is the hi, Brian. Brian says, good evening. Good ThursdAGE upon you. Owen, are you using your headset mic or are you, okay. That might be, that's different than you normally do, isn't it?
Yes, I normally have a Yeti plugged in, but it is not currently plugged in-able thanks to the holidays.
That's okay. You do sound a little bit like you're in a box, but that's, that's okay. This is the...
I am in a box. I just refer to it as my home.
That's good. If I sound like I'm in a box, that is because I am deep within the bowels of the adventure game engine, tinkering about. I'm actually in an empty living room in an empty house. My last day at my old place, and I move on to my new place here shortly. But the internet still lives here, and thus so do I.
Is that where disembodied voices live?
They do, yeah. I just kind of haunt, this particular place. I think it'd be fun to be a ghost. I'd do some serious haunting.
I don't know. I feel like if I was a ghost, I would keep seeing things I would not be able to get out of my head. Oh,
fair point. Robert Emerson says it's definitely got a hollow ring to it. That's basically my life in a sentence.
That's just my effort at sincerity. It ends up having a hollow ring to it.
I'm a husk of a man. Actually, I'm just a disembodied. Yeah, so not even a husk. Hey, friends, it's ThursdAGE, and we're gonna, why don't we just cut this music? And why don't we do this? Behind this modesty screen is none other than Owen KC Stephens.
Hey, folks.
Hello, and how are you today?
I'm good. I'm okay.
You're okay?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm holding on by my fingernails.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? I can relate. And Robert Emerson says, being a ghost sounds like work without a paycheck. That's a good point. You know what? Haunting work is work. And I stopped working at ISPs 2 decades ago. Hey, I like it. Chris says, hi, Owen.
Hi, folks. Apparently I'm muffled, so I apologize. We'll try and work out a better sound solution for the next time around.
No worries. A quick question to folks like our friend Ordinal. That's a great name, Ordinal. I like that. For folks who are listening, can you at least discern the, the beginnings and the ends of words and the sentences that they create? Let me know. Owen, give them a little...
being muffled is one thing. If you have no idea what I'm saying or you're only catching the middle of each sentence, that is somewhat more of a problem.
It sounds like you're, quite muffled. Yeah. You know what? We'll roll with it for now, understanding that, dissecting Fantasy Age. Owen gives you the big yawn of approval, everyone. But dissecting Fantasy Age requires that we kind of go in areas that the normal mortal may not go. And Chris says that you're understandable, just muffled. And and so we'll endeavor to kind of create a little more diction so that you can hear what we're saying and maybe unmuffle ourselves a bit. But I love this series idea. This was Owen's idea, and it was to imagine Owen, the idea man, coming up with this idea. It's going to be a good one. And essentially, we're going to be going through each of the facets, the pieces that make up Fantasy Age, and doing a deep dive. And here's the deal: the goal is, let's bring some new folks into the fold, whether they're established tabletop roleplay gamers or they're trying stuff out for the first time. I think Fantasy Age is actually a great place to start if you're just kicking off your tabletop roleplay experience. Philip says, I feel that yawn in a big way. Healthcare burnout is real. Yes, my friend. Philip, I did not know this about you, but are you working in the healthcare field? My heart and my appreciation goes out to you. This is an incredible time to be that person, and so I'm glad you can stop by. Hopefully, we can give you a little lift to your spirit. And Owen, why don't we kick this off and talk a little bit about why we were kind of picking this direction and what it means to you, and then let's talk about equipment.
Yeah. If Philip is indeed. So yeah, shout out to Philip. Thank you.
Big shout out. Yeah.
I know how stressed the healthcare system is at the moment, and even if I may get COVID someday, I'm going to put that off as long as possible to flatten the curve. So I'm staying at home, wearing my mask, yada yada. I encourage all of you to do the same as much as you can, though I understand everyone's circumstance is different.
And by the way, just do it for Philip.
Seriously.
Yeah.
He's here. He has a name. You've seen him type. So by all means, if you can't do it for a nameless mass, do it for that specific named person.
Yep.
So here was the idea. We at one point did a dive through various books of Fantasy Age, and we got through the majority of them. And I thought that was a good sort of high level overview. The fact of the matter is that, like most role playing games, Fantasy Age is made of different systems that interact and combine to create a whole that is sort of like a tapestry, right? There's a weave and a weft, and they cross over each other. And if you don't kind of look at the individual patterns, the individual threads, you can sometimes be surprised by results because you didn't get a real good grip of how the individual parts work together. So I was just looking at my basic rulebook because the core rulebook isn't out yet. We expect to get that to you in your hands this year. And it's broken down into table of contents, which one of the things I try and do as a developer is just go back to the book as much as possible. So I'm not ever trusting my memory over what we've actually told people is the game, because
I like that. Yeah.
There have been points which I realized the game I was playing at my table was not the game I was selling to other people, and that's problematic when you're trying to improve things.
Hey, quick question. We're referencing which book specific again? It's the basic rule book. Okay.
Yep. We will be replacing the basic rule book with a core rule book that is currently being looked at by other Age developers and our publisher, Chris, and then we'll go to editing, and then we'll go to print. But in the
replacing or complementing?
Replacing, right?
Oh,
so
yep.
The rest of the game should work fine. The point, and you can still use this book. The whole point is that you will still be perfectly capable of taking the basic rule book and using it. A bestiary is a bestiary, an adventure is an adventure. But we are going to replace this basic rule book with a bigger, more developed core rule book that will have another class. It'll have the envoy class. It will have some quality of life improvements to how the system works. It will have some new ways to define things, some things that we sort of assumed everyone knew we're spelling out, some things that we never thought about until people asked us we're defining. So you should still be able to, use your bestiary, your layers book, your campaign setting, whatever, with the new core rule book. And it'll have the same sections in it. So this is still relevant as a concept. But I was just looking through it, and each chapter breaks down a part of the game. So you've got character creation and all of its subsections, and the basic rules and all of its subsections, character options, we tend not to talk about these things as individual pieces of the game, like backgrounds, which are an important part of character creation. I don't know that we've ever talked about other than they exist. And what has been on my mind recently, most specifically, is equipment, because equipment is the way that a lot of characters interface with the adventure and with the game system, and it can sort of define their options. We have focuses and ability checks and a lot of that. I don't need a manual of etiquette in order to make a communications check, try and talk someone into something. But if I want to be effective at climbing, punching, fixing, crafting, especially if I am not a mage who has spells options, a lot of that is going to be done with equipment. And I think there are some things that we sort of, as designers, assume people realize about equipment that is not necessarily the case. And I think there are some fun things game masters can do with equipment and that players can do with equipment that aren't intuitively obvious and that we don't necessarily spell out. This book makes a real point of saying, this is the equipment, here's how it works. So we give you the price and the weight and the damage it does, and that's kind of it. In fact, I don't even know that we give you weights, depending on what we're talking about. We do minimum strengths, but not exactly weights. But we don't talk about, we have chain as something you can buy, and chalk and cord. But we don't talk about why would you spend more for chain when cord is available. There are no real game rules there that tell you, why would I want chain? Why would I want cord? Why would I want compass? Why would I want fishing tackle? And as a game master, letting people know that what equipment you have is relevant to what you will be allowed to try, what is likely, what is unlikely, what is impossible. And as a player, letting the GM know, hey, I have, for example, picked up a whistle, and I have picked up a whistle because, in my experience, a whistle is louder than someone shouting, and therefore I want to be able to signal my allies if I get in trouble because I'm the scout way up ahead. Having conversations in advance about that sort of thing can be a great way to know that your assumptions and the GM's assumptions are going to overlap, and to just get in the habit of having a conversation about how you want to use equipment. So if you're going to the GM and you're saying, hey, I've got a hatchet, does that mean I can cut down a tree, or do I need a woods axe, which is more expensive, and what's the difference?
Love it. Hey, folks, if you are just now tuning in, I'm about to do something unprecedented. I'm going to sneeze 80 times. No, I can feel it right on the edge of my, it's like some 5 years of dust. So basically, I'm allergic to post people. I am creating a special code. Now, listen, if you've already got if you own this book, open it up and check out and ask your questions as they arise. But if you don't, let's have you. Let's see if I can get this in before the sneeze hits me. I'm going to give you a code, and it's good for each person can use it one time, but only 5 times can it be used. And so what that means is I'm going to put this code in this. You'll go to the Green Ronin store at the link that I just dropped in chat. Sorry, friends who are watching this not live. We'll think of something special to do to you. But the first 5 people who put the code in that I'm about to drop in chat will get the basic rulebook for free. PDF only. Let me double check to make sure that that's the case. 1 second, and everything's looking pretty good. Let's do this. And but if you've already got it, don't. Let's leave it. Let's leave it for folks who are like, I like this, and dropping here, and go ahead.
We love you all, but let's let the new folks get a free copy of the book if they're paying attention or are interested.
That's right. That's right. And if you've lost yours, or then that counts as well. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to drop the code, and then I'll let you continue. All right, there we go. Take it. Oops. There we go. There's only 5, so get to move on. Go ahead,
when you're looking at equipment, the first thing that people automatically look at are weapons and armor, and that's a good and reasonable place to start, because generally speaking, fantasy adventure has a fair amount of combat in it. Obviously, we've got a whole set of combat stunts. It's part of the fun of the game. So while we don't want to say that armor and weapons are the only important things in the game, they are an important starting point. And they have some balance issues that I'm not sure people really think about. For the most part, when you start the game as a first level character, you can't afford heavy plate, right? It's 150 silver pieces. You probably don't have that much. You certainly can't afford that and a weapon and a heavy shield. You're talking about hundreds of silver at that point. And these things have a real impact on what level of threat you can deal with. So some characters are never going to want to get heavy plate because it's got an armor penalty that applies to various checks, and it can be quite sturdy. In fact, you might well have a character that wants to run around, okay, mostly I'm going to run around in light mail, and then if we are told, hey, you're marching off to war, you have to hold this gate or whatever, I will then put on the heavy armor. But if you, as a game master, just think, your character is a knight, so I'm just going to go ahead and say you have a suit of heavy armor, and then I'm going to put a minor threat up against you. Well, you've got an armor rating of 10 in heavy plate, which means that every time someone does damage to you, you take 10 points off of the weapon damage they do. And if you look at minor threats, you will very quickly see that most of the minor threats in the game aren't prepared to have 10 knocked off of their damage, right? So you end up, just by passing out that piece of equipment at super low levels, you end up having the character that is wearing it have a hard time doing a bunch of stuff, right? They don't have the skill value necessary to make a bunch of jumping and swimming and climbing skill checks, because they haven't managed to focus it, get those values up, etc. And yet other parts of the game are now super easy for them because they are just going to bounce a lot of damage. So you get 2 imbalances. They're having a hard time with various tests that you might want them to pull off, but they're having an easy time ignoring damage in a fight. And there's no real conversation in the book itself that says, hey, because this is expensive, we don't expect you to have it until later in the game. And that is the sort of thing that I think is worth considering. While on the same token, we generally speaking don't lock weapons behind the same sort of price barrier. While weapons have different expenses, and especially if you're getting into firearms or you're wanting to throw grenades, because we have grenades rules with acid grenades and ice grenades and fire grenades, those are really priced. The basic weapons, all of them, are priced so the first level character can get them. And that's one of those little gritty details that can really impact how well a game goes. But for the most part, game masters either are assumed to just understand it or work it out in play, and it can create some unusual, odd imbalances, and you might not understand why. By the same token, there's a lot of stuff that we have prices for that there is no formal listed use for. Like the equipment has combs. You can buy a comb. We tell you how much that costs. And then you have to ask yourself, as a player and as a GM, if I buy a comb, is it ever going to come up? And I think it is worth, as a GM, it is worth it to keep track of what your players have bothered to invest in, because that is one of the ways they tell you what things their characters are interested in and what they're prepared for. It would not be unreasonable, right, to have a plot point where you say, okay, you all find an escaped horse which, and here's another equipment thing, we don't have prices for horses in the basic rule book, which is one of the reasons why I suspect people don't think about them much. We're fixing that for the core rule book. This is an escaped horse. It's still got some tack on it. Its fur has gotten matted. Its mane is tangled up. And somebody needs to, in order to befriend it, in order to make it feel better, in order to maybe get it to a point where it trusts you and it will take you to its owner that it escaped from, because that's going home for it, and then you can get a reward. Someone needs to untangle it. And if you have a comb, that is such a simple task, it doesn't even require a skill check or the test. The test to do it, maybe it's a dexterity test to pick everything out. You can say, okay, the target number of that test is 4 lower if you have a comb, because that's the tool you need for the job. That is the sort of thing that I think makes for interesting role-playing and interesting options beyond just combat, that is dependent on the game master and the players thinking about the world they live in and interacting with it through things like equipment. Even if you don't specifically put forth challenges with player equipment in mind, and I think it's a good way to think of new encounters and challenges, is to look what equipment they have and think, how would this be useful? As a game master, I think it's worthwhile remembering that equipment exists to make things easier. So you might, if people say, hey, we want to bury the bodies of the bandits that attacked us that we killed and give them a proper funeral because we don't want them to come back as revenants. As a game master, you might just go, okay, you bury the bodies. Or you might say, hey, does anyone have a shovel? Yeah, how are you digging the holes? Are you you have nothing but daggers? Are you hammering with your daggers and trying to get down there? Okay, well then you're going to have to make constitution tests to dig it out before you get too tired, or it's going to be so shallow that they will not have had proper burials. And I mean, in the real world, a shallow grave is a thing, right? People, it's a phrase, and getting someone enough feet down that their body isn't immediately dug up by animals is work.
Yeah. Real quick question: what is that shallow grave? What is the colloquial? I'm not. Is it just?
So a shallow grave is a reference to someone that has been buried and not done a good job of it, right? People talk about someone being 6 feet under as sort of the standard, or 2 meters. That's the standard depth at which you want to dig in order to have a body not be dug up.
Right.
A
So it just means like
grave,
with haste or like,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and likely to come back to make trouble for you, right? If you dump a body in a shallow grave. Aaron Arnold said, what's a charge? The point was that we've got 5 charges on this code for people to get free copies of the basic rulebook as a PDF. 2 of those have been used, so 2 people who did not have a PDF have grabbed it. If you're one of the people that does not have a PDF of the basic rulebook and you want one, you want to play, you want to look at it, you want to open it up, the code's in the chat, so you can look it up and get yourself a copy of this book.
You're welcome, Shadows over Scotland.
So tools and equipment exist for a reason, and just because we have not written a digging a grave rule subsystem, because Fantasy Age doesn't want to have specific subsystems for every little detail. What we want is for the players and the game masters to think about their game as a real world where having the right tool is useful, and having the wrong tool can be better than no tool, and then have a conversation about it, pitch it back and forth. So if you were wanting to dig a grave, just as an example, because we've hammered on it for a while, and you do not have a shovel, that doesn't mean there is nothing you can do to dig a grave. And you might look at the game master and go, well, I don't have a grave, but for whatever reason, my character has a rake. Is there we got a rake in the rule book, which we have a description of a rake. Can I use this rake to rake up a spot where we can more easily get in than just using our hands? Especially when the GM responds with things being difficult, right? We want to dig a 6-foot grave. Well, that'll take you, a day of work per grave dug. Well, what if I've got a rake? What if we've got a scythe? What if I'm willing to ruin my hatchet by hacking at the earth and digging it up? And that means that the players are thinking about their world and how they interact with it.
So, quick
And
question, Owen. If you, as a GM, if you're deciding that you're going to adhere to the rules of raking up a grave, is it incumbent upon you as the GM to also add some fun flavor to what's going on? Like, is this a good moment to spice it up, or do you find that balance is important?
I think you want to let the players lead you at what level of detail and unexpectedness they are interested in.
I like that.
Right.
Okay.
So I was talking about we want to bury them so that they don't come back as revenants. So one of the things that could happen in a game is that a game master might, as a throwaway line, say, "Hey, you are attacked by a number of undead, Walking Dead, shambling corpses, zombies, whatever you want to call them," and it looked.
Oh, darn it. It's so I tried to hit mute. I'm so sorry. Thank you. So, yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. And it looks like they were killed in battle and their bodies weren't properly buried, and so they have come back as undead. And a GM might just throw that as a line. Okay, that's why they're there. I'm describing the world to you. And the GM might give it no other thought. And then when the players next run into things to kill, they think, well, we've been told that this is a world where if we don't properly bury them, they could come back as revenants. We don't want to deal with that. We don't want anyone else to deal with that. So we want to be able to bury them. And then the GM talks about whether or not that's difficult. And they will therefore be looking at what do I have that will let me do it. And there's a whole section on tools in the equipment list, right? Anvils and awls and bellows and chisels. And those things tend to have a short real world description of what they do with no game mechanical stats for it. So we're specifically told the bellows is an air bladder with a nozzle on one end and a pair of handles that allow the air inside to be quickly expelled in a strong gust to keep coals burning as hot as possible. And that's all we say.
That's actually in my dating profile. I'm an air bladder. Yeah.
Well, I mean, some people are moaners, some people are bellowers. But once we've given you that real world description, if you have some players saying, hey, we are going to set a fire on the corner of this enemy fort so that it will generate smoke and burn them out, and they'll be distracted, and we can try and rescue our friend NPC who's in the jail. And the game master says, great, you try and set a fire. He sets a low test number, and they fail. And they're like, okay, well, you've now failed to start a fire. And one of them says, well, I have a bellows. My character was a blacksmith. I paid for a bellows. It says that it will keep coals burning as hot as possible. Can I use the bellows to reheat the port where we tried to make a fire and have another shot at this? That is when the players have told you as a game master that they want to interact with the details of this task. And that is where you can say, yeah, a bellows is a great opportunity to do that. I think a lot of GMs have a tendency to just say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do this. And do not often enough, when someone states their goal, ask, how are you going to try and accomplish that? Right? Hey, can we pry open this chest? Maybe. What have you got that you're going to use to pry it open? And if their answer is, I have a dagger, well, that doesn't mean it's impossible, but we all know that a dagger is not designed to pry open a chest. But if they say, I've got a chisel, I've got a crowbar, I've got a drill, I have a hammer, I bought tools, I have a mallet and a pitchfork and a saw, then that is the place where the GM can get people to interact with these tools they've paid for and reward them for having thought about that.
I like that. What's interesting is how, in your experience, how random do people get with like what's in my pocket?
I think that how random they are tends to be random.
Fair.
It depends a lot on the player. Like I was playing in a game where one of the players asked if their character could have a butterfly net. They wanted their character to be someone that was running around with a pole with a hoop with a net on it because they collected insects and butterflies to examine them because they were sort of a scientist, alchemist, surgeon kind of character. And the GM said sure and came up with a price. Great. So now we have a butterfly net. And then in a very early encounter, someone's pet skunk got out,
Oh,
and the skunk was a pet, so no one wanted to hurt the skunk. But if you got too close to it and you failed a test against its stench, you could be incapacitated and it could run off. And so that player said, well, I have a butterfly net. Can I scoop the skunk up in a butterfly net so we can carry it without harming it? Now, the game master did not set this up to be a scoop a skunk encounter knowing that they had a butterfly net. They were just scoop a skunk. They were just challenging them. Here's a place where we're going to use combat rules, but you don't want to hurt this thing. Somebody cares about this. Someone who you're trying to have a good relationship with, who you want to owe you a favor, loves this skunk. It's a low-level encounter, right? It's like, there are 3 rats that attack you in the bottom of the tavern, whatever. But that challenges the players to think about getting creative. And if you don't have a butterfly net, you start saying, well, I have a spare cloak. Can I throw the cloak over it? I ended up with some trade goods, and I've got spare food, or I've got honey. Can I put a little honey around and then I've got a chest. Can I trap it with a chest? When you set things up that are obviously possible, but but not necessarily easy, that is the space where the players will start to move in and look at their equipment. And if you do it once where you absolutely don't need equipment, but it would be easier, right? You can perfectly well just grab a skunk and successfully make your constitution tolerance test. So
I'd like to see it try. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly. You could be capturing a greased pig, which is a thing that, again, locally.
Why? I was thinking the same thing, and I don't know why. I was going to make some kind of greased pig quip, but you beat me to it.
It's because it's a thing, right? So you've got that situation, and someone says, well, I in fact bought 4 square yards of silk just because my character likes the feel of it on their skin. Can I throw the silk over the greased pig and use it like a net? You are creating that situation where the players can get creative. And my basic philosophy for role-playing games is that role-playing games are best when players have interesting choices. Right.
Casey, real quick says, butterfly net. I prefer to carry a butterfly knife. I prefer to carry butterfly shrimp, just because they're so delicious. But I really liked what Aaron says here. I like things that are practical, but you're right. You have to make it meaningful. Horses make sense in long travel, wagons, especially if you're making loot matter by weight. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I mean, if you tell someone, hey, there's a hoard of tin pieces, they're worth even less than copper, and it's 10 tin, 50 tin to the copper, and there's 700 pounds of loot, what are you all going to do? And they're like, well, we're just going to put it in our pocket. No, you cannot have 700 pounds of tin in your pocket. You can get 3 pounds of tin in your pocket.
Right. Imagine if if you've got 700 pounds of butterfly shrimp, you're not going to be able to fit all that shrimp in your pocket.
Then you're going to run into more random monster encounters, I'm reasonably sure, because you're going to smell delicious. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Casey, you know that Owen KC Stephens lives by the rule of cool, so I'm glad you brought that up.
I will actually mention the rule of cool here in a second, because that came up earlier today on RPG Twitter. But if, as a GM, you present these challenges that are not necessarily combat related, but are things the players want to handle, and then the players will go to the equipment section, because they're like, well, this is not a thing I can do, so obviously I need a tool. We're tool users. That's the whole reason we have thumbs, or the other way around. Because we have thumbs, we make tools. But anyway, and
what came first?
Right. That is why we have more than just weapons and armor and magic items, right? Because we want to have a game where people say, just entirely at random, I have, entirely at random, a hoe. A simple tool with a flat metal blade at one end, used by farmers and field workers to break up hard earth. HOE. So that hoe.
Thank you for the distinction.
If my character's background was farmer, I might have decided to buy a hoe, and then if we need to dig a grave, I can look at the GM straight in the eye and say, hey, I've got a hoe that's designed for breaking up hard ground. Does that make this easier? But you can also get a situation with, hey, I want to climb over the wall. Okay, well, we've got a climbing test. Oh, I failed. Hey, I have a hoe. Can I take my hoe and hook it to the top and climb back over? And from my point of view, that means that the player is now making interesting options and engaging with the world. And I want to reward that as a game master by saying, yes, you may make another attempt, and now the target number is lowered by 1 or it's lowered by 2. Having a pole to hook to the top to pull yourself up, that's not what a hoe is designed for, but we can all visualize how that would work. So I am making that easier to reward you for thinking about that choice. And the more that you reward people for thinking about those things, for trying stuff, the more they will interact with the game. And in my experience, the more fun they'll have. You don't want to go the other direction. And if someone says, hey, I want to climb the wall, say, what equipment are you using to assist you? Right? You can generally climb without a problem. But when someone tries something that is not intrinsically, obviously a core part of what people can do without any special equipment, or when they fail and they're looking for some way to get a mechanical advantage, a situational advantage, that is when I think it is super useful to say, let's look at your equipment, let's consider what you have paid for, and let's play those roles, put yourself in that place, think about how to overcome this stuff.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to say, hey, speaking of, what you have paid for, we are all out of the basic rule book for Fantasy Age. But look at that. One more has appeared somehow magically. And if you are, unfortunately, if you're watching this on demand, that means you missed out on this. But if you head over to the store via the link in chat, you put the basic rulebook in your shopping cart. Check out with the code only _5_phage_basic, but you got to copy and paste it. It's got to keep the case. You will get, there's only one left. There were 5 and then they're all gone. And then one magically appeared. It'll be the last one of the day. So make sure you get over there and grab that while you can.
I will put someone on the spot. I will put Troy on the spot, by the way, and say, hey, if you're watching this later, send an email to letsplay@greenronin.com with a question or a comment about this show, and then ask Troy if he will send you a code because you engaged. Again, we're talking about engagement, using your tools. Ask him if he'll send you a code for a discount or a free one, and maybe the first 1 or 2 people to do that, he will.
And you know what? Maybe the first 3. Yeah.
Right.
Tell him Owen sent you.
Tell him Owen sent you, and it'll be proven that you're paying attention here. And if anyone's a half hour into this show and they want to play the game, and a free PDF is what will get you hooked. The first one's always free, right?
That's right. That's right. And this is the best thing to become addicted to, because
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly cheaper than minis games. So
that's true.
Casey Butt says it always bugged me when I'd ask for something they say I can do because I don't have the skill or whatnot. One of the nice things about Fantasy Age is that with our ability and test system, generally speaking, things don't usually require some sort of specialty effort to be able to do it. And there can be exceptions, right? If you have no training whatsoever in forging out a sword, you probably can't effectively make it from one try. But when we've got backgrounds and we've that's exactly the sort of comment we should not have on screen.
Well, no, I was just going to say, no. I brought it up on purpose because I say make the hoe the king and or queen, and don't. And it says no. It's an agricultural town. It's a disguise. I'm imagining that you're dressing up as a garden hoe, which is a hard costume to pull off.
In a similar vein, rake is also a word that can mean an agricultural tool or a person of questionable morals. So
a rakish person. Yeah.
I suspect farmers are responsible for a fair amount of our slang. You know what? Stan says, Owen sent me. Yeah, you and thousands of others. If thousands of people leave questions and comments for our show on letsplay@greenronin.com and that email address, even if we don't give everyone a code, we'll be happy as heck.
You know what?
A lot of engagement.
If that happens, Owen will eat his Hawaiian shirt that he's wearing right now. Is that a Hawaiian shirt?
Yes, this is a Hawaiian shirt.
Yep.
And it's a new Hawaiian shirt, so I won't eat this one.
Okay.
I will get a Hawaiian shirt.
Nice. Okay.
For you all.
Good. There you go. So bring in that engagement. You get a free PDF, and you get to watch Owen eat a Hawaiian shirt.
Yes. That
Tropical.
might be a Hawaiian shirt iced cookie, but we'll see.
Oh, hey, yum.
So that's where I come from on equipment. And we've got, carrying and storage and tools and trade goods. And some of the stuff is just suggesting opportunities, right? Like we have trade goods that suggests that trade is a thing that players can get involved in. We don't have complicated rules for trade. So a lot of these are the first little beginning of something that the game master can work with. We have trade goods. So if you say, hey, you are trying to get spices from here to there, Stan says 100% cotton, aloha. Yeah, they're good with sriracha. We have the basic information that 1 ounce of spices runs 5 gold, right? And 1 pound of salt is 25 silver. So you have that basic information. And then Aaron
Oh,
said,
you're good.
crossing the line. Yeah. You didn't cross
Yeah.
the line for chat. You're totally good. I just didn't want it to be memorialized forever as part of the show.
No. Here's the thing, Aaron. I redeemed your comment for you, and you're all good. Yeah. We're all set. And thank you, my friend. Don't think another thing of it.
Yep, we're all good. So those beginning points are just a place for the game master and the player to start, and then take it in whatever direction they want. And the age system, the adventure game engine, is supposed to be loose and open-ended enough that you can say, hey, can I buy an ounce of spices and then try and take them someplace else and sell them for more? And the game master can say, sure, it'll be a communications test. What's your background? Do you have something relevant? Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but that is there as an option because we gave you this basic point of information. It can also be useful for comparisons, right? Like, I don't know that we have herbs separate from spices and salt, but you could easily say, hey, we've got feathers, we got flour, we got honey, we have beeswax, can I get this other trade commodity? I want samite specifically, and someone can say, well, we don't have samite listed, but we know what linen is, we know what silk is. We can extrapolate what samite would be.
What is samite?
Cloth of gold.
I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So, Brian brings up that trading can be a motivator to get characters out into the world doing some stuff, whether they got to go pick something up or they need to deliver something, or working for a spice merchant. And we all know that this spice extends life. So, I mean, it's yeah.
The spice is basically just caffeine, but you get jitters instead of a lip stain.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But and these are things that a game master can use as adventure hooks, right? You can say, okay, I know that they stole a pound of spice when the bandits hit this merchant caravan. Now I know that a pound of spice is on general worth this amount of material. Someone asked, are the guidelines for selling items, trade goods, i.e. 50% of cost when selling? There aren't. We largely leave that to you because we want you to be able to take whatever story and monetary level makes sense for you and your game. We don't want to get ground down so you have to memorize the trade rules in order to trade, right? So in general, I would say figure out how much loot you would give someone for an encounter, and if that encounter is a social encounter selling stuff, have them make the communications test, take into consideration if they've already gone through an adventure, did they carry it across a continent, et cetera,
Right.
and then just reward them like you would any other kind of encounter, even though it's not a combat encounter, with, yes, you make this much profit.
But the thing about Fantasy Age RPG is that no one loves, it is every player's dream to get engaged in a complex economic system of,
I had friends that ran the AFK Tavern out in Seattle, which
is
sadly not with us anymore.
Yeah.
It shall rise again someday. And they had a space starship game where they were traders, right? They were freight carriers. And they spent most sessions with spreadsheets open, figuring out the cost of fuel and the distance you were going and the return on investment. And that was fun for them. They spent most of the time with the nitty-gritty of running their imaginary sci-fi business instead of exploring or fighting off pirates or like entire game sessions. And I had several of them sitting around saying, oh yeah, we had a great time. We figured out that we could give someone a raise and they could get an assistant, and the increase in efficiency would actually make a difference in the budget. And honestly, I get the feeling that they loved it because these were people that were actually running a business, and being able to run a business without having to worry about random BS that they have to in the real world, where the return on investment numbers are consistent, and I know what my odds are, and I know what my skill check is, was very satisfying for them, because running a business is much more difficult and chaotic and unpredictable in the real world. Much like I can enjoy getting into a fist fight as a character, even though the only fist fights I've ever been in, I had no fun whatsoever.
Hey, Brian brings something up here as we kind of move into the last portion of the show. In medieval Europe, we actually had merchant adventure guilds. The guild halls were still there, and are still there in a lot of towns. How much research and do you recommend into the trappings of yesterday, or the sort of back in the day?
I recommend you do absolutely as much as is fun for you.
See how that works.
This is a fantasy universe, right? We have introduced magic and gods and monsters, and if you're using like the Freeport setting, that literally there's a dead serpent god and his coils define how far you're going into different alternate realities. So if you're having a grand old time figuring out the 27 ranks of the various guild memberships and how they interact with authority from the church and authority from the state and authority from big rocks that specifically overview an area and grant power just because they're the rock of the area, have fun. I've got 3-inch notebooks full of stuff as a GM that I just wrote down because I was enjoying the world building. If you don't want to do that, feel free to say it looks a lot like my favorite anime or a television series. You can say, hey, this has been inspired by the Wheel of Time show on Amazon, so I'm just assuming things work roughly like that, and unless something else becomes an issue, we won't go any deeper into it. And if it does become an issue, the answer will be make a test that I'll come up with on the time. We'll assume that you figured it out, and on we go. Just like I have had players, when they come to a new town, say, hey, what are all the laws of this town? I have no idea. I have no idea what all the laws of this town are, because I don't want to have to write up an entire book of laws just for you all to get into a bar fight. I get that you as a player might have had a bad experience with a GM that said, hey, you walked in wearing blue pants and that's illegal here, so you were arrested. But you can frequently solve those things just by saying, okay, you want to know what the laws of the town are? Well, I will be honest with the GM and tell you I haven't written them all up. What are your backgrounds? Oh, your background is criminal and you've got to focus in communication deception? Make a communication test and I will tell you if you are likely to do anything that breaks the rules. And when you tell me you're trying something, I'll tell you if there's a law that violates that thing. So you don't have to worry about it all in advance. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go in and set fire to the town. Great. I don't even need you to make a check. That one's illegal.
Right. Did you do now? Were you crossing at the corner? Was there a crosswalk? Did you look? Yeah.
We don't have to define all this stuff in advance. That if you have fun doing it, great. But the thing to be aware of is, while I have 3-inch thick notebooks of worlds I've built, I have many fewer players that have read all of that 3-inch thick notebook. You don't want people to have to do homework and do their taxes in order to play in your game, unless that's fun for those players. That's a play style issue.
That's right. If you literally, if this is you, pew pew, keep it down with the pew pew. I'm doing the P&L for our trip. Right? I love this. Sorry,
I'll turn on the silencer. Right, I got a button here, and a little force silencer materializes over the end. Yeah, I mean, of course, the people screaming will still make noise, but you do what you can.
Well, when you're not, when you find that you are in the red, lots of screaming to be done. Aaron says, thank you. The details are hard to remember, and I just want to have fun. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is time, and maybe, again, if you are somebody who's like, I just need to sit down with my fantasy spreadsheet and get my fantasy whatever, or, that could be fun for some folks. Maybe not so much all folks, but I will say, like, back in the day, I was playing a game, one of the classics, Ultima Online, and I was immersed in the role play community, like immersed. And we created a whole government. We had treaties and we had, all of the trappings. And we really had a good time with that and got into use the sort of the court intrigue and the rules and all that stuff. But, would I do it again? Probably not. Probably not.
A lot of that is a matter of what does the group have fun with, and it's worth having a conversation outside of game time if things seem to be going in a direction that someone is not having fun with. My number one rule, Stan claims my first rule is if you're having fun, you're doing it right, keep going. That's actually my second rule, really. My first rule is everyone agrees that we're all here to try and help everyone here have fun. So we're doing an interactive experience, and we all accept that since this is a social event, that involves taking on roles, that we all accept some responsibility for the fun of everyone present. So my fun is not more important than your fun. You accept that your fun is not important than my fun, and we're all working together. So if someone makes a character and they're making a bard, and they want the fact they're making a bard to mean they're going to take up game time to write a song, and they don't want to move on to the next scene until their song is done, that is a thing to have a conversation with the group about and say, hey, if you want to make a song in between game sessions, we will happily give you time to sing it to us, or we'll read it for you. You can hum it. We'll try and pick it up in the second bar. At the same time, we have decided that 90 minutes of you trying to think of a song that your character is so smart they can flip out quickly isn't a good use of our playtime. We're not having fun. What we'd rather do is just have you make a communication check or perform check. Do the test. We'll see how good your result is. We'll all react to the song, and we'll play Throw a Coin to Your Witcher on the assumption that it's that awesome. And if you want to tell us specifically what it was next session, we'll give you a moment to do that.
I like this idea, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Phage. Don't forget your trowel. Because it's equipment today.
It is.
Totally my gosh. I like a good joke.
I like bad jokes just as much, honestly.
Samesies, as evidenced in ThursdAGE, our name. We're nearing the end of the program, and so Owen, I know that we didn't necessarily consider sort of an order of operations. We picked equipment, and what's next on our tour of the Woody.
That's a great question. I picked equipment because it was on my mind, but also because it was a thing that was not super deeply gone into on any of the other things we've talked about. I actually sort of want to slide from equipment to magic items.
Sure.
Natural presentation. So I'd like to talk about magic items next time around.
Okay, I love this. And I also love this. Two players, Brian F. Irving's game. It's a modern horror campaign that wrote an entire album for the band that their characters belong to. They did it between sessions and even designed a CD case. That is so awesome. I prefer if I ever play a bard, I like to keep everybody kind of hostage to my lyrics and force them to listen until I feel as though they have appreciated it enough. Much like this program, I think.
I was playing a modern game with a group of young heroes who were, in addition to being young adventurers, also a band. And we did not want to take the time to write up songs. So instead, much like you might say, my character looks like this piece of art, or this villain looks like this thing from the bestiary, we put together albums where we would name the album, and then we would decide what real world songs did we like are on that album that are the equivalent of what our characters had. So we knew what was on the album, even though we were grabbing songs from different groups. That gave you a feel for what's our A side and what is the theme of this album and what kind of music are we doing without us having to actually create music from scratch.
Awesome. So we've got a few things on the docket. Well, number one now is create the ThursdAGE album. Pick a track or maybe a few, write up some songs and be prepared to present them at our next ThursdAGE, which happens, Thursdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, here in this space. And in addition, Owen said, hey, if you got some questions, comments, thoughts, you can send them to let's play at greenronin.com. And what you'll receive in return, possibly, if you say, hey, Owen sent me, is a free PDF. You'll get the basic rule book for free. And it'll just be a code. I'll slide it your way, and you'll be able to apply it in the store and get yourself a PDF fresh off the presses. And then the next thing that I totally forgot. Oh, here it is. We're talking magic items. So if you got your questions and your thoughts for the next ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens and me, your pal, Disembodied Troy, then all you have to do is send an email to let's play at greenronin.com. And I'll even let you say Owen sent me, and you can find yourself a free something. But, what do you have questions about specific to magic items? I'm imagining a whole world of complications open up as we discuss this. And I also want to say thank you, everybody, for hanging out and listening to us and watching us on YouTube and Facebook. Do me a favor, stop what you're doing, take a look at what you're watching, and if there's a thumbs up, click on it. If there's a share it with your mom. If there is a place to comment, say, hey, I love this program. It's my favorite. That helps us get some traction out there in the world of social media. Also, let your friends know that we're doing a cool thing and having some fun doing it. And we hope you had a good time today. Owen, what do you have cooking in your world? Any special stuff that people should be paying attention to? A Patreon, a visit to a blog post, what have you?
So I do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/Owen KC Stephens, all run together. Right at the moment, I have been sharing notes about a first edition Pathfinder game I'm thinking of running sometime soon. I have also recently opened a Ko-fi, which is ko-fi.com/Owen KC Stephens. And I mention that because that is where I am putting together a gallery of Alphonse Lord Tubington of Sausage on Chonk, Order of the Big Biter, which is my housemate's very adorable cat. And there are a number
adorable.
A number of people that are big fans of Lord Tubington, so you can go to ko-fi.com/Owen KC Stephens. You can look at the Alphonse Lord Tubington gallery, and if you want to, you can buy me a coffee for $3, which I don't promise to use on coffee, but I promise to pretend that you bought me a cup of coffee.
I like that, and I also do like that gentleman of a cat. Just a very regal gentleman.
He's a fine orange and white tabby chunk.
Yeah.
I also want to say, I don't want to take time for a whole show on the Thursday album, but clearly the first song in the ThursdAGE album would be Thursday in the Danger Room by Run the Jewels.
Okay, I like it. Now, if you do happen to put together a track, a playlist for the ThursdAGE album, maybe some original track, maybe you've got your own thing, let us know.
I think between Like a Summer Thursday by Towns Van Zandt and Jersey Thursday by Donovan, and
you gotta have some Rush in there.
Afternoon by the Rollins Band, Thursday's Child by Hours, Mrs. Thursday by Dave D, Dozy, Bricky, Mitch, and Ditch. I think there's enough Thursday music that I don't have to come up with my own.
Wow. Okay. Did you just pull that out of your Thursday hole or what? That's amazing.
Of course I have a Thursday hole. How am I going to do this show without a Thursday hole?
Truth. And I got to tell you, we are at the very waning moments. My Thursday hole is empty. So I need to recharge.
The Thursday hole is essentially Stan's Adventure Hole, but with a big sign over it that says Thursday.
That's true, everybody. If you do recall, it's one of our first pieces of art was the adventure. Stan's Adventure Hole. So, reach out to Stan and say, hey, Stan, show me your adventure hole. And he will. He will show you. And you will thank him.
Are we not doing phrasing? Is phrasing not a thing anymore?
Oh, gosh, right. Yeah. Stan's personal adventure hole. There we go. Thank you, everybody. You're
so much better.
You're all the best. We're gonna go charge up our Thursday holes. Talk to you soon. Owen, always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much. And have a great rest of your week, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.